Okay, let's go through this. Just a quick reminder, we're going to be engineering architecture, but we're also going to talk about road building and some neat things Romans really had going for them. We get done with this, it's on to a real quick review. For some people it's brand new, for others a review on using Sketchup, and we'll talk about the new features. From Sketchup we'll use something called Tinkercad. From Tinkercad we'll do something nobody's done here, and that's called OpenSCAD. And we'll start printing things out, and I've set it up so you can watch your print from your house. So we're going to have some cool things going on. It's to the point now where I teach, we have 3 or 4 of them going off at all times. So it's really, we're using it to do neat things. All right, remember, if you took one, enter your siege weapon photo or video by midnight today. You can upload it on Edmodo or send it to youngengineersoftoday@gmail.com. How many people are going to send a picture in? You get it free. If you win, we'll send you a new project to build. All right, I've got a couple of you send them in, and I got a couple of you waiting to send some in. I don't have some of you yet. So go ahead and get them turned in. And if you build something, it doesn't have to be perfect. All right? Go ahead and get it in. You might not think it's perfect when it's actually pretty good and will do well. All right, I got some questions here. Let's see what the question's about. Well, that popped up there real quick. Good. Send them in a little bit later, but don't forget, let's get them done, guys. Okay? That'd be a real shame. Okay, I'm going to put these up so I can see questions. Okay. And again, what is an architect? It's not modern. It's really been around for a very long time. And, you know, from the Greek word, chief carpenter. I think we'd all agree it's a lot more than that, but that's where it came from. You know, but it ends up, it's someone who does design and gives you advice. I'm going to tell you, I rehab and have some rental properties, and I build homes and that whole thing too, my own growing up and stuff. And I come from a family of, I grew up on a farm, but I had my mother's side of the family, a lot of builders and whatnot. I will tell you this, an architect has always saved me money. As a general rule, they save me money because I think of ideas and they improve the idea, and we usually come up with a better way of doing it that sometimes saves the money. You know, but basically qualified to give advice, design and give advice, both aesthetic and technical. But like a good lawyer, a good doctor, someone you rely on, hey, is this a good idea or not when you're talking to the general contractor? All right? If there is a form of engineering and science and art all mixed in together, I would say architecture is that as much as anything. And all you have to do is see some of the great bridges to believe that. And the civil engineers that design that, not necessarily in the great buildings. All right? And yes, I know a civil engineer usually designs bridges, but they'll bring in that same aesthetic value you have with bridges. We do that with buildings. And buildings become beautiful and become what people come to just to see the building. Okay? So, what we're going to do, but we don't have a whole class on architecture. That would be a semester-long class itself. Let's go ahead and let's talk about prehistoric. Yeah, Fred Flintstone there. They made megaliths, obelisks, thatched huts, and earthen mounds. Problem with thatched huts and earthen mounds, they kind of deteriorate through the years. They're hard to find. And Stonehenge, we still don't completely understand. Anywhere 2,000 to 3,000 years before Christ, you know, so just think, Christ was on this earth about, let's say, roughly 2,000 years ago. In Christ's day, he would have gone back 2,000 years and said, wow, okay? And then we have Silbury Hill, a man-made prehistoric earth mound in southern England. That's, you know, what was that? Look how long it must have taken them to build that. And you have Stoneheads on Easter Island. Easter Island's an interesting deal. Those, if you go there, they stopped building those things when their society collapsed, you find these monuments just stuck right. It's as if the masons stopped working on them right on the spot, and almost eerily on that. We pretty sure they used them in their religious holidays. They thought if they built more of these, you were more powerful. You were showing off to your neighbors. The gods would make you happier. When things got desperate, they made even more of them, hoping the gods would smile on them. When in reality, what they ended up doing, and this is going to sound dumb, but we can look at it, their population got too big for the island, and so they started cutting up their big trees. And believe it or not, they had the world's largest palm, but it went extinct. And we think it's because they cut them all down, which makes you sit there and go, wait a minute, you're living on an island. You're cutting down the only palm tree that's big enough to make canoes in. You're in trouble. And I'm sure when they were doing it, they didn't think through it, and they were desperate for the wood. You know, maybe after the fact they realized it. I don't know, it would have been pretty bad. And there were some survivors when they were discovered, but they disappeared over time. All right, some of the great builders, obviously ancient Egypt, 3050 to 950 BC. Mainly they're building tombs, great temples, right? And they use a great big, huge, wide base to make them, but they're one of the great wonders that still exists today. So here is Imhotep. How cool is that? The architect, an engineer that designed that, we know who he is. And that was 2600 BC. We knew who he was. So if you go into civil or engineering like that and these big structures, who knows? You stick your name on there and we could be doing this. I don't think we covered this last week. I don't remember seeing the slide. Riley, did you cover it 8th period? Did you cover it? Hey, Riley, were you here on the 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock? Would have been 8 o'clock. Oh, I wasn't the teacher. All right, well, I got to go back through because I'm sorry if that's the case. How far did you get then last Wednesday at 5? Can you tell me? They covered for me. How far did they get on architecture? It would have been good if the other teacher would have told me they got this far. I wasn't expecting it. Okay. Well, let me just go. I'm going to just cover through this a little bit. If it's a little bit of a repeat. Guys, all right, the Roman pillars. Well, they got a little bit farther. Let me go back through. I'll try to make it speed along. I'm sorry to make you sit through something you've seen a little bit about. So here it is. And here's classic. We'll be getting into this a little bit more. You know, this is the Greece, the fall of the Roman Empire. We got to be careful when we say the Roman Empire. Because the Roman Empire, there's the west side of the Roman Empire, we think of Italy. But there's the east part of Roman Empire that was Constantinople, well, be Hungary today. That lasted another 1300. I mean, it lasted really till the turn of this 1900s. So, or, yeah, that's a little bit of exaggeration, but it lasted much, much longer than the Italian side of the Roman Empire. All right. The Romans start using mathematical principles when they're doing it. They didn't have a zero, and that really messed them up. I mentioned this once before. Zero, since we have a minute, I'm going to just mention this. Zero serves as a null, and it's a way to count, and it gives you a way of making endless numbers. Think about it. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 0. So you add a 0. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 2, 0, 20. And we just do that, right? Over and over again. Where the Romans used, plus, 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 and then plus 4, and then 10, and that. But it's a hard way to count when you say 10, but you say 0 also means null or void or nothing. So it threw their numbering. It was a setback. And the concept of zero as a origin or a central place would be developed in the Middle East, but it would be a while before it's really adapted. We really appreciate the importance of it. It's funny how something like a zero can be so different, but it was. All right, so they built their temples, worship, placed, and also places to show off. Okay. All right, and so when you build it like we do today, think about it when we build our great stadiums. All right. Now, I hope we're getting it. The Doric, the Ionic, and Corinthian, as in Corinthian leather. No. All right. So, and you can go and you can look at houses. You can look at people's houses. You'll see the same thing. You see it on our White House and stuff. There's your pace, pedal, shaft. All right. Keep hitting it here. Again, everything was proportioned. They may not have had zeros and do the calculations, but they really worried about the proportion for appearance's sake. So the oldest, it's this oldest, simplest, right here at Doric, back to 7th century BC. They started making the pillars. You know, this is very clean. If you go in South, you go in Charlotte, you go in Harrisburg, go in Raleigh, and go in any of these, you'll see these. And then Ionic's the female form. A little more delicate, I guess. And then if you have the two scrolls, there you go. See it right there and there. All right. So there's a Doric, very plain. Ionic, we bring it indoors, a little more feminine. At least that was the thought at the time. Corinth really wasn't used by the Greeks very much. That's a great little bit. Hey, that's a little bit of trivia question. Which of the columns invented by a Greek but wasn't used much by the Greeks? And that's Corinth. And it's, you know, look at this. This is like over the top. Okay. You can see, amazingly, you can still see the influence of classical orders in modern architecture, which, you know, you see it, Abraham Lincoln Memorial right up there. See the Doric right up there. You can look at it. It's a memorial to his death. They keep it simple. Also reflects the man, I suppose. Reflects that we're talking about someone who passed away in the country. And then you have the Jefferson Memorial. And check out the scrolls there. All right. And then the New York Stock Exchange with the fancy smanchy. All right. So again, Ionic, you see the little scroll, fancier scrolls, Corinthian. And there's Doric, the simple scrolls. So you see someone's house. See which one they have next time. I don't you think you're going to see Corinthian very much. That's really out of favor. You sometimes see Doric in people's houses, but really you see a lot of the Doric, I should say. You see some Ionic, sorry. Let's talk about the Parthenon. The high city, and until a war hit it, was in pretty darn good shape. It's kind of sad it got blown up. The people of Athens built it for her. So you can imagine when that thing was fixed and everything was working properly, how beautiful that would have looked. This was in it. Look at the scale of the people. You know, this is nearly 500 years before Christ. They did it in only 7 or 8 years, which I think is really impressive. And they're kind of battling over how big this thing is. It depends how you measure it. Somewhere between 30 and 70 meters. 30 by 70. It's a rough idea. Get you an idea. What's kind of cool is it's back-to-back halls. If you see, you got a hallway here, and there's where the big statue would have been, and then another hallway. I'm not even going to... Obstodomus, sorry, the small inner hall, treasure and temple rites, and then the Cella. That's the main room right here. That's two right there, okay? Okay. Which one would have been Obstodomus and which one would have been in Cella, folks? Would you hazard a guess? Think about which one's bigger, which one more delicate, more feminine. And remember, Corinthian wasn't used by the Greeks much. Doric was used in the simple stocky columns. Ionic was used for the smaller interiors. And there you see it. On the outside, there's Doric right there. Okay. Okay. And then inside, the Ionic were right there. Again, blown up, broken up, so we don't get appreciation for that. Made out of limestone and marble. That's why acid rain and stuff's really starting to mess these things up. Okay. Prior to the 15th century, Doric temple construction was made with wood, so they made it originally with wood. Hard to believe. And so, yeah, and then it was all wood, and they decided, well, we're going to make this out of stone. They also had slaves. So, you know, slaves that were real craftsmen, they kept them alive longer, and then there were slaves that weren't craftsmen, and they just worked them until they died. You know, what's also cool about it, lintel, and here's the post, there's no mortar in it. So they weren't using concrete at all. You know, supposedly it's pretty much all stone. It's going to be all compression. And you can see it right here with the Doric right there. All stone, all compression. Folks, did your teachers talk about this part of this right now? Raise your hand if they did. Okay, good. They used 20,000 tons of marble. That's a trivia question. I'm not sure how important. But remember, at this point, the Greeks would have been using simple machines, pulleys, levers, inclined planes, all these things to make it happen. You know, they had iron tools. We knew they were doing that. They would have been using chisels. Also, too, there was this notion somehow that slave people that worked on a lot of these projects weren't well educated. They tended to be tradesmen and craftsmen. In Egypt, there was almost like a middle class that worked on the pyramids. They would farm during one part of the year, and when they weren't farming, they would come and then work on the pyramids. It was still bone-breaking work. Back-breaking work, I should say, but it broke their bones up. We know this because there were cemeteries near where these places were made, for example, in the pyramids, and we can look at when a bone is stressed, the muscles in the bone is stressed, you've worked it really hard, you'll scar the bone, and you can see they're all scarred. They worked very hard. It was back-breaking work. All right? Now, and basically, think about this. If you've split wood with a chisel, that's what they were doing. They looked for the natural cracks, and then they would split it open. So, you know, and then they were pounding on the wedge, which would sooner or later release it over time. So you can imagine how long that would have taken. So anybody here split wood on a piece of wood, just think trying to do that on a rock. All right. Then they cut it over. They're going to flip it over so it's level it. Masons would carve the top or capital. Ah, see, that's where that word capital comes from. Of one of the temple's exterior columns. And then what they do is they take it, they carve it away to look like about this. They're not done with it by any means, but now they take it to the spite where they're going to work on it. Then, and I didn't, until I started researching this and talking about it, I didn't realize it took them this too long. it took them 2 months. So to take half the carved capital column ready to the quarry. Just that. It weighs 13 tons. Needless to say, they're using simple machines and doing what they need to do to help pull this bad boy up. So you imagine having the patience to use wedges and to chop away, and that was taking nearly 2 months. Then you load it onto a wagon, and again, you know, the wagon's pretty heavy duty at this point. I think they had a name, was it Tetrachyle? I'm sorry, I'm terrible about these names. They did them, you know, and then they disassembled the sledge to return it to the quarry. Soon they will hitch a team of mules to the wagon. So take a sled, drag it over, and then they drop it onto a wagon. And then think about it. It's an 11-mile, day-long journey. You would think it would even take them longer than that to carry this weight. But here's the top of the column. They're dragging it, if you can see it right there. And they're going to be using mules to help pull this thing along. Then they're going to use a pulley and a braking system. So they've got, if you look at this, here's the mules going this way. They've got a pulley and they're pulling the column up this way. So mules are coming down here. That's not real clear. Whole pack of mules going this way. They're having gravity work on behalf of the mules. And we got a pulley to pull it up. So imagine if we're saying the column's going north, the mules are all walking south. And think of it like horsepower. How much can one horse, you know, move? Well, now we got 20 mules there, and they're pulling them down. All right, now think about this. They got to put these things on a column and get them up on top. Something that is 13 tons. Think of that. That's a school bus they're dealing with weight-wise. Except this school bus is much smaller, so it's very dense. It doesn't have any wheels on it. All right, top of the Acropolis, the half-work capital joins dozens of other finished blocks. So they put them up there, and they're going to wait. Here's the other thing. They're putting them up there now so they can build it. But they're not going to finish them for a while. They just want to get it up there while they're constructing everything else because they have the hardware to do it. And in the middle of this, we're going to be attacked at least once, and people are going to try to destroy what they did. All right. All right. After 8 years of... Here, let me move this over a little bit. It's nearly complete. 1,000 marble blocks, right, are topped. And then they decide, hey, I think we'll build a bigger one. All right. You know, I like that. It was pretty good, but I think we can do even more incredible things. That shows you how much wealth they had, too. All right, now, think about these perfectly straight lines. They look like they're bent a little bit, don't they? That's an optical illusion. They're all straight. But if you look at it, they don't look quite right. So, all right. So what they do is they build, what they did is they can, the horizontal lines were they would bend the lines in and out, depending if they're horizontal or vertical, and that would correct with that illusion. They built, and what I really just want you to get out of this, they build in imperfections so this thing would look straight and accurate. And they would build them inward so they look like they're falling outward, by the way. That's kind of cool to me. The backward lines make the two straight lines appear misshapen. See what we just said? So that's what we did there. And if they did that to the temple, they knew it would make it bad. So that's where, and I dropped that down. But really, I just want you to see that they took into consideration, if you make this, this makes it look bad. So they had to do is they had to misshape in it and make it look great. All right? And so to prevent it from looking like it's making the columns look like they're curving inward, even though they're really not, they would make them swell outwards. Like, look how they curve the base. Wider at base than at the top. So this way, this doesn't look bad. So you get a sense of it. Horizontal lines were built convex to correct sagging. So if you put it in there, it starts to look a little bit not right. All right? So this prevents, if you put these in, if you put them straight up and down, they look like they're going to sag off to you from the side. If you build them convex, put a little curve in it, you're set to go. And then these lines are going in inward to make it look so it's straight, so it doesn't look like it's falling outwards like that does. These are pretty poor. I'm sorry, they're not as straight, as clear as I would like. All right. You know, and this is the shame of it. The Parthenon acted as a church, a mosque, and a munitions depot during the Turkish occupation. And that's why it's such a shame, because it was they put ammo in it. So not surprisingly, 1687, an explosion caused most of the damage seen today. And that's just so sad. And so this is what it looked like back in the day at the height of its glory, which is pretty amazing. This is how it looked. With color, and we don't see that today, but it would have had all that. Now, if you want, you can go on Minecraft, and there's some nice Parthenon. Some guy's done a pretty good rendition of this temple. I'm not sure you guys are all that much into Minecraft, but you know, just want to let you know you can find those out there. And again, turn in your siege weapon. I just put that in there in case somebody didn't get to it. All right, now ancient Roman architecture. We're going to talk Roman roads, arches, the coliseum, and aqueducts. I can't wait for you guys to see the roads thing. This blew me away. All right? Yeah, wait a minute. Reese just corrected me. Minecraft, the most amazing game in the world. You're very true. So, why are roads important? Freaking move armies, folks. It allows commerce, but allow the Romans move quicker than their enemies could. They could take an army and that's it. That's one of the reasons Eisenhower recognized that. That's why we have superhighways in this country, is the fact that you can move your armies around quickly. Now, this is what they did. And imagine, look at this. This is a typical road, 18 to 20 feet wide. They had drain in the road so the water would not drain out. They had drainage ditches. They had crushed stone in the cement to make it stronger. They had dressed stone blocks, so they was like, think of bricks on there, compacted with layers of sand. All right. The road was a little bit higher, so that way you could be above the drain to keep the water off the roads. They recognized it was important to keep the water off your roads. All right. So what I want you to get is this wasn't just a gravel road that they threw down the road somewhere. All right, folks? This was serious compact slanted rock, crushed stone, and cement. That's right, 2,000 years ago, they were using cement to make roads. Here's a road today. Folks, that road was built by the Romans. Isn't that amazing? Mind you, in the Dark Ages, we almost lost our ability to write. We were incapable of making anything like that. And it was only recent history in the last what, 150 years we could do this. Now, let's talk about the challenges. Can you imagine having to put all the stone and concrete? You had to have slaves to get this done, right? Very labor intensive. There's obstacles in your way, as with any road, and they don't have compasses or maps yet. Look how straight this road is. Check that out. That's amazing. So they used a groma. All right, and they found this when Pompeii went down, by the way. There's a cross, here's a bracket, it goes right down here, and you got these plumbing sight lines that you would drop. See how it's 90 degrees there? Where they used this, and there was another person, they put little markers from this guy down to this guy, and they drew that little line right there, okay? And based on that, by the dropping weight, so there's a square cross, see it up on top? You had to make everything at a right angle to this, all right? A straight line was confirmed when one lead weight lined up with one in front of it on the same piece of wood. So you see how this lead weight is here and this lead weight's here? You knew you were straight on. So that meant you knew the guy up ahead was right in this place. If not, you had to turn this until they matched right up. Which is pretty ingenious. See, so they would have had this line has to match up to go to this guy. If you do that, we can draw a straight line. Or get him to move until he lines up with those two pieces of lead. All right? So there's the metal sticks. Once the surveyor was sure of the straight line, wooden posts were dug in the ground. And not surprisingly, Roman soldiers, which you think about it makes sense. You have your Roman soldiers doing it. You're paying them anyway to defend your country. They're standing guard. Well, what of the things can they be doing? Hey, the best defense is offense. Keep taking your roads farther and farther out. Now, can I have everybody's attention for this? Please. I've got lost some of your attention. I'm looking up here. All right? Okay? Check this out. These are the Romes of ancient Roman world. They had 21 highways, 40,000 kilometers. Give that in perspective, that's 24,000 miles of roads. Look at this. I'm not sure North Korea has that many roads today. Folks, look at that. Those were roads built by the Romans. Look how far they go. Britain, France, Italy. Funny is, there's Roma. They all took the same road in. Isn't that amazing? That is an incredible... That blew me away when I saw this. I had no idea. Think about the... Folks, this is a time they didn't have compasses. You know, they're writing on scrolls. And they built all these roads. And they were, look, they're all over the Hayden's wall up here. You can't see it, but it's right up here. That was a wall they put up to stop these guys from coming over the top. All right, any questions about the roads, folks? All right, any questions about that? Okay, let's go on to the next. You got a crown and a keystone. That goes from this span here. A lot of compressive forces go here, here. I don't care that you know those names there. We liked arches. Archers use compression really well. Stone works really well in compression. So you see a lot of arches. And see, there's the compressive forces coming right down there, and they go out through their support. So all the loads are coming right in there, going right in. the more weight, the bigger the load you put on it, it actually improves the forces on there. Your keystone's the last thing that kind of holds everything together. All right, and if you think about it, the Coliseum is just a series of these arches going all the way across. All right. All right, look at that. It took 131,000 yards of cubic of stone to make it. Yeah, man, it's 500 feet wide. It's more than a football, nearly 2 football fields long, nearly 500 feet wide. Slight oval to it. It's huge. Look at that, just beautiful, even by today's standards. You know, 50,000 people could sit in the Roman Coliseum. Also, look at all the doorways. It could empty out. You could fill it up and empty right out. It was, for the most part, free to citizens. There was actually, you could do things like, there was underneath it. They had to build that to build up the support, but we could also flood the Coliseum. It also had a cover over the top. So, you know, it's we started building in our stadiums, covered stadiums. They were doing that back in the day. You know, they used marble on the outside, as we said. 80 access arches, 4 main entrances. So it really could empty out and fill up very, very quickly. You know, trap doors. You have military people there to protect your Roman elite so they aren't executed or assassinated. Probably is what they were more worried about, being assassinated. This is something near and dear to my heart. On the aqueducts, at the height, Rome was getting 1 million. They had, at its height, 1 million people. They were getting 100 million gallons of fresh water a day into the city of Rome. I saw an aqueduct in France when I was there 6 years ago this summer. It's still standing. You have people that did graffiti on it 150 years ago. They got their name written on there. All right. Why do you need to bring water in? Well, the river's getting used up. They use water for baths, public toilets, so they could go to the bathroom and it would get carried away. 11 aqueducts, 300 years before, 200 years after Christ. Let's go ahead and see this again. There's the Keystone Roman Arch again, and that allows the water to get going. Let's go back through again, please. And this is the water. The water's up here on the aqueduct. It's not down here in this arch. Just so you know, the water's coming here. It's not going through the arch. I think sometimes we think, you know, where was the water coming on? This is crossing a river. We pull up some aqueducts, all right? See how the water's not coming through this part? I think we tend to think they're coming inside the arches. It's not. It's coming there. Here's your water from the maze. They would get them siphoning, so that's how they got it to go uphill. That's amazing to me. They were using pipes, concrete. Now, they did use some lead, and that wasn't good because they're giving themselves lead poisoning. And so what they did is what they would do is they make it deep, so deep, it would come up so sharply that when the water fell, it had enough energy to go up, not quite as high as the other side, but high enough to make it. So here you go. And here's a Roman aqueduct. Here's a modern aqueduct. Conduit. It goes down through the ground and back up to the treatment plant to the city. They would just make these aqueduct bridges and go right to the city. So they didn't treat the water like we do today. But they also, we dig it underground. They made these bridges for the water. here's a, check this out.
Back in 56 pass, I wasn't prepared to translate that. That little mark with the A and then the...
Again, I thought the Minecraft aqueduct was pretty cool. And it's pretty clever. And it gives you a sense that the water flies on top of the aqueduct. It's not going through the aqueduct, all right? And it's impressive engineering by anybody's standards. For over 500 years, they made 11 big, huge aqueducts like that. Now, what I would like to do is, we still have time, I would like us to go ahead and we're going to go into SketchUp. I want to download SketchUp, the newest version of SketchUp. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording of this, but I just want to say is, next thing we're going to do is go to SketchUp, and let me go ahead, I'm going to pause this for a second. Alright, this is SketchUp, the newest one, SketchUp 15. It's pretty sweet. You can find, for those people who've never seen it, it allows us to do architectural. It also, we can do things, you can write, you can actually, they give you API. They'll allow you to do all kinds of nifty things with it. APIs are a way for us to take, programmers can go in and change the code and modify and make it better. We can also do 3D printing with this. All right. And so that's what we're going to be starting on now and going forward, is going to 3D printing. So what we want to do is, you don't want SketchUp Pro. All right. We don't want to buy it. We want to go to SketchUp Make. All right. This is SketchUp Make. We want to go ahead and download this. So let's, all of us, even if you had this last year, you got to do a new one. I plan to use SketchUp for educational use. And then you're going to tell something about yourself, and then you're going to download it. All right. So let's go ahead. We'll pause. So, you know, I've got my email. I'm instructor, Young Engineers Today. Mac, go ahead, download this bad boy. So please go ahead and do that, folks. Again, you do not need SketchUp Pro. Don't even bother with it right now, okay? Everybody, let me know. Raise your hand once you've got yours downloaded. Someone has a question. Let me go find that out. Here we go. All right. Well, somebody's had it for a few weeks now. All right, Daniel. I'm glad you've got it down there. Oh, I just clicked on Riley and Daniel. They said they had it. Go ahead and put your hands back up. We'll watch for everybody. We can get it down there. All right. Then once it's downloaded on a Mac, it's DMP file. I'm going to click on that. I agree with the license. It's opening. And I just drag SketchUp into my applications folder. And it's copying it. For all you Mac folks, everybody else, PC people, I'm sure it has an executable install. Go ahead and do that. Once we have this installed, go upload your photos for the competition. And we'll announce them. I'm going to be speaking in Winston-Salem Tuesday. So we'll be able to announce them by this time Monday next week, the winners. All right. So mine's on there, so I should have it. So I'm set to go. Let me go ahead and find my application folder here in a second. And let me see if we can find it. Hopefully it'll be there. Sketchup 215. Open. You might get a message saying, hey, you got it off the internet. Use on a Mac, I think it's Command, right click, and it'll open it. There we go. You know, choose a template. Here's symbol feet and inches. I like centimeters, millimeters, because of working in 3D printing. But it doesn't mean you have to use that. And it pops up. And there's our guy. Woman last year, I think. Guy this year. All right. Make sure you get to this point. We'll start Wednesday. We'll start going through this. Since you guys are a high school class, we're going to go through this quickly. And it's a powerful tool. It really, you can use this to do a lot of things. And with Tinkercad and OpenSCAD, you can go pretty far before you start needing to go into something more heavy-duty professional AutoCAD, which you will certainly get that in college. But for bang for the buck, I think we're fine for what we're doing now. All right? So I think this is where we're going to leave it at this point right here. Once you've got it installed, go ahead and you can go off if you want. Now's a good time. Take a picture of what you built and upload it for the contest, okay? All right, then. I'm going to stay on for those folks. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, but I'm going to stay on for anybody that needs a hand. I'm going to start recording.